Scene one, Apple, take one.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shane Borza. Welcome to another episode of Film Notes, the show where I interview people in the industry about the industry, and I get their notes on what they've learned and how you can learn from them to make your own projects and do what they do. I'm really excited. I have someone that I met just recently at a film festival. I was just blown away by not only her, but the film she was in. We're going to talk about that later. We have Devin Sidell from LA, who is an award-winning actor and a producer. And I'm really psyched to talk about both of those roles as well as the film. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. And thank you for that amazing intro.
Well, we were just saying at the beginning that, so it sounds like the producing part is new for you. So we're going to get to that a little bit, but let me just gush for a minute. We met at the Nevada Women's Film Festival, which my wife and I are part of, and we go every summer. And we just went into your film cold. We didn't know anything about it. We were just like, oh, there's a movie playing. Let's go in before it starts. We didn't know anything about the story. We didn't know anything about you. And then you came up in the panel afterwards and we were like, oh my God. And so not only was it like, she's so good and the movie's so good, but then the like real story layer on top, I was like, I'm going to go find her after the movie. I have to talk to her and get her on the show. So I'm so glad this worked out because we were just blown away. And I want everyone to know about the film. But before we get there, let's go back. How'd you get in the industry? Did you grow up like wanting to be a performer and act and like do stuff when you were a kid? Like, did you fall into it? Like, how did you end up being an award-winning actor and a producer?
I actually kind of fell into it. So it's weird because I grew up in LA. My parents were not in the industry at all. But my older sister, when she was like 6 or 7, apparently was like, put me on TV. I want to be an actress. So my parents got her an agent and she started going on auditions and I wanted to have nothing to do with it. But one day my mom had picked me up from school and we had to take my sister to an audition. It was for a McDonald's commercial. And so I was just waiting in the waiting room while my sister went in and the casting director came out and was like, are you auditioning for this too? And my mom was like, no, it's just her sister. She's here. She was like, what? When do you come in? And I booked this commercial. Like, I don't know what. So that was my first time on camera. It was this McDonald's commercial. I was 5. And then after that, my sister's agent was just sort of like, okay, well, we'll take you on, as a client. And I auditioned and I worked on 30 something. I actually did a mini series where I played Leslie Ann Warren's daughter and she plays my mom in this movie, Love Danielle. But I did not like it. I did not like the auditioning process. I didn't like having to go right from school to auditions and not having time to do my homework. I was very studious and it started to really stress me out. And I was just at like 9, I was kind of like, you know what? Like, this is not actually something I want to do, which is funny. So I stopped doing that, but I loved performing in theater. So I did, theater at my school. And then in middle school, I did theater. And then I did theater in high school. And I was like, oh yeah, this is what I like to do. And then when I went to college, I just sort of knew, you know what, I'm going to move back to LA after college and I'm going to pursue acting. So it's a very strange road.
Well, I love hearing, and of course, if you ask 100 different people how they got in the industry, you get 100 different answers. There's no like one way. And I love the backstory because, it's just like a good script. You have no idea what's coming next, but then when you look back, you're like, it had to happen this way.
Yeah.
That's really funny. And, I recently, just this past season, so we're going to season 5 next year. The first season or 2 was just like people I knew personally. And then it started to branch out. And I've also, especially this year, started to talk to people who are more like just doing production, not necessarily film. So I've had some theater people, some dancers, some singers, like it's all production. You need lights, you need sound, you need a director, you need, all that stuff, but it's not necessarily film work. And that's one of the things that's really interesting too, is that parallel between things like theater and film. So you mentioned going away to school and then coming back, did you study theater or film or acting or any of that in college, or were you doing more of kind of a real degree?
Yeah. So when my parents did this with my sister as well. When we were going to college, of course, I was like, I would love to do some sort of theater stuff. And my parents were like, please do not get a degree in that. Like, please get a degree in something else. And what I loved about my college was that there was so much extracurricular theater. So I did a ton of theater, like nonstop. I was doing shows, I was singing, I was doing musicals, whatever. And then I got an English degree, which also you might say is probably not actually useful, but it was not a theater degree. And I sort of like, those of us at my school who were interested in theater and the arts kind of did this sort of sneaky way of getting a bit of a theater degree, because there were 5 different programs you could take in the English department. And one of them was basically like reading plays and working on plays. And that was called Program 5. And so pretty much like I was an English major, but like the emphasis was reading plays and drama and Shakespeare and all of that. So it was a way to still be involved, but not necessarily get a degree in theater.
So fun overlap there. So I have a double major in literature and writing. So my whole college career was in the writing department, other than like, well, you have, to take a mandatory history class, you have to take a mandatory science class. And I was like, okay, I will take those. And then I will just live in the English department.
Yes. Yes.
So
I did take a Shakespeare. I took an acting class. I did take a Shakespeare class, and then all through high school, though, I was in the theater company and taking all the classes too. So I shouldn't act like I wasn't doing any sort of training. I did a lot.
All kinds of performance and production is a combination of like the art and the science. So because you're creating, it's make believe. You're making stuff up that doesn't exist, but you also have to like learn like how to do those things. And some of that is going to be like, here's a class, like read the book and whatever. But part of it is like, as you know, it's like, okay, we got to get it on its feet. Like we got to like walk it. We got to talk it. We got to be like, it doesn't feel right. Well, how do you know? Because it doesn't feel right.
We tried it. Yeah. Because we tried.
It might be great on the page, but if you don't know how to write it on the page so that it's a script and it makes sense to people, that's not going to work. But if you also don't know how to like get in the room and like do the thing, that's not going to work either. So I'm glad you had kind of both of those experiences. You mentioned, so you had the agent when you were young, you did some stuff, you went away to school, and then you came back. So when you came back, what was the goal? Were you like, I'm going to come back and just work? I'm going to come back and try and pick up acting again? Like, did you have representation like all through this time? Or how did that work of turning this into like, oh, I'm an actor now?
So I did not have representation. Of course, I kind of wished I did. I went to school in New Jersey, so I was close to New York, and I was like, what if I had an agent, and what if I could go? But no, I was like really focused on school and finishing school. And so a lot of people from my college went on to become like investment bankers or like what, and there was like a job fair at the end, like when we were seniors, and you were sort of like required to go, which was very strange. And like every table I went to, the people were like, all right, what are your plans for next year? Like, what internships do you have? Would you like to meet with our like investment banking people or what? And I was just like, no, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. No, I'm going to be an actor. And everyone was just like, okay, are you sure? Because that's not really like literally every table I went to, I had to like explain myself. No, I'm going back to LA. I'm going to be an actor. Going back to, okay, but you're going to need a real job. I mean, that's all true. Totally true. But I went back to LA and I just started literally like not literally, figuratively pounding the pavement. And just sending out, I do know the difference between literal and figurative. So yeah, like I started reaching out to agents, and at that time, we weren't like online. It was like hard copies of headshots, and I was like mailing them to agencies and, checking in with anybody I knew. Again, growing up in LA, like you end up with connections that it's just because you grew up in LA. So I did have some connections to like people who knew agents and people. So I was lucky in that way. Like I would be like, oh, do you think your agent friend would have a meeting with me? So I ended up with this great representation, and Yeah, I started auditioning, but at the same time, you know, I had to have a day job. So I did, I actually signed up with this substitute teaching agency. And so I was a substitute teacher for a long time, where I would get calls at like 4 a.m. that would be like, there's a teacher who's not available. Can you come in at 7 a.m., you know, across town and be our teacher? So I did that. And now I'm a tutor as well. So I kind of do both.
And that's another kind of through line for a lot of people, as you know, is figuring out like how to have something that's consistent enough that you can like adult, but it's flexible enough that you can drop everything if you have an opportunity to do something. And of course, the joke is always like everyone's a barista, but they're really an actor or the screenwriter or whatever. You know, that's just the day job. But there is a lot of truth there.
Yeah.
And especially as we navigate, you know, life, you know, we get older, we get married, we have kids, you buy a house, you do whatever. Like the thing that I always thought was so funny, to go back to that job fair, is I find a lot of people almost have the opposite experience. Like I have friends that are attorneys and they're like, it's so hard to like get into a place and like become a partner. And it's like, you're just grinding and you're struggling. You just can't ever like make it as an attorney, like you have, or med school or whatever. Like it's sometimes really, it's like, here's a decade of your life. We're going to put you in debt forever. And you hate it. And then on the other hand, it's like, well, I've got a job. And then every single week I just go try out and have a great time. And every once in a while I get something, you know, and it just really fills people up and they have this very fulfilling life, even if they're not like quote unquote successful because they're not making six figures. And so the balance of that I always find is like, how's this person doing it? How's that person doing it? And there's no one way, but hopefully, and this might be a good way to segue in. So I have a friend who's an actor. She does theater and film. And she always says, my job is to go to auditions.
Yeah.
Now, occasionally I get a break from my job and I get to act, but that's my job, is find auditions, go to auditions, kill auditions. And I think people feel like that way is the opposite sometimes. But it's also that way when we're like creating a film. It's like I'm pitching and pitching and pitching and pitching, and it just takes forever to get some of this stuff done. So once you kind of landed and you got some of this going, you reestablish yourself in LA, like how did you get to the point now? And I was just looking this up in the background. I forgot you'd also written this.
I did. I co-wrote it. Thank goodness. So I'd never written anything. I'd not written a screenplay before. Thank goodness I worked with a co-writer who knows the structure and has written screenplays before. So yes, co-writer. Yes.
But it is Herculean and big and difficult and long as it is to like become an actor who's like a working actor. It's this whole separate saga to like get a film done. So, and I don't want to give anything away, but you had this major life change happen, which is what influenced the film. So navigating that as well, you know, how did you go from like gleefully getting your 4 a.m. wake up calls and making it all happening, settling in and getting acting and all this stuff to, because I don't know the backstory of like when this all like medical issue happened, and you know, please talk as much or a little about that as you like, and then coming through that to then getting the film done.
Yeah, I started working with the co-writer on actually like writing this in January 2018. So this has been a long process. And I sort of want to backtrack in that, like, it, you know, it's not easy. Like the 4 a.m. call, be a substitute teacher. Like it was tough. I mean, it was tough. I was very lucky that my mom lived in LA. I lived with my mom for a long time. Most people, you know, I don't have that. But you know, it was struggling. It was hard financially. It was hard. You know, the balancing is so hard. I again, lucky that that I'm from LA and that I had family in LA and I could live with them. In terms of like the story of the film, so it really is kind of a lifetime situation. So when I was 13, my mom was diagnosed with, or she was misdiagnosed for a very long time. And when she was finally diagnosed with ovarian cancer, it was almost stage 4. And this was also the day after the Northridge earthquake in LA. In Northridge in LA. And so it was a very scary time for many different reasons. And I bring that up just because definitely, it's like part of your formative years at that age, 13, 14, and my mom was really sick, and I remember being in the hospital with her. She had to have emergency surgery, and there were aftershocks happening. And I remember thinking, what if her tubes get pulled out, and it was so scary, and what if something happens during her surgery? And so it was a very scary time. And then 2 years later, her sister, my aunt, died from ovarian cancer. So this was a very pervasive part of my childhood and growing up. And ovarian cancer is not something that you can scan for or check for. There's really no reliable screening methods. So once it's caught, it's usually already stage 4, and the survival rate is very low. It's actually, my mother is still alive. My mother survived, and it's kind of a miracle. Nobody really knows how that happened. She was very lucky, but it's something that I carried around since I was 13, 14. I just figured, well, I'm probably going to get ovarian cancer, and I'm probably going to die from it, because nobody's going to be able to figure out that I have it until it's too late. And I think the sort of fear that went along with that time, and I know it's so strange, but it really is tied in with that Northridge earthquake. There was just so many things that felt out of control and scary. And I think I kind of tried to push that all down, but as I was getting older, I would think about it a lot. I remember there were nights after I got married where I would wake up in the middle of the night next to my husband, and I'd be like, I could be dying from ovarian cancer right now. And we could have no idea. Like, it really could be happening right now. Like, it's just, it was scary, and it was, it was just something that had always been with me. And in speaking with my doctors as I was sort of getting older, this was when I was about 34. And I'm still auditioning, having my day job at this point. Luckily, thank goodness, I have this wonderful husband, and I get to be on his health insurance. So that was amazing. He's also a great person. But I spoke with my OBGYN, who said, you should probably get this genetic testing that's available because of your family history with your mom and your aunt. And I had said at the time, I thought that if I got genetic testing and I tested positive, my insurance would drop me, and I would never get health insurance again. And she assured me that that was not the case anymore. And not only would they not drop me, but that they would then cover any preventative scans or surgeries. And at that point, I thought, oh my gosh, maybe there's actually something that I could do, even though I really just felt like I was just waiting for I was just waiting to die from ovarian cancer, honestly. And so I did the testing, and it came back that I had the BRCA1 gene mutation. It turns out my mom actually had testing as well, not when she was sick, because it sort of wasn't around then, or it wasn't something people could do, but much later. And that's the mutation she had as well. So I kind of knew it would come back with that answer, but I was still really upset about it. I thought maybe somehow I could escape this fate. And then my doctor, referred me to all these people, the genetic counselor, which I should have gone to see, but I was in such a whirlwind and such a haze. I didn't know what to do. And I started meeting with doctors about preventative surgeries, and it was so overwhelming that I just thought, you know what, I'm going to put this on hold for a second. The gynecological oncologist said that I would probably be okay until I was 40. I had until I was 40 maybe to make this decision. And I was 34 at that point, and I was so overwhelmed. Because, there are these surgeries, but there are also these side effects. It's not like you just have the surgery and you're done. Also, my husband and I didn't have biological kids. So there was a question about that, if I was going to have my ovaries and uterus and fallopian tubes removed. Anyway, so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to wait on this. And then 2 years later, my sister, who was only 38 at the time, is diagnosed with breast cancer. And I was like, holy crap. Am I allowed to swear on this? Okay. I was gonna, holy shit. I went back to all these doctors and was like, just take everything. Just take, this is too real now. This is actually happening. So at 36, basically because my sister had a cancer diagnosis, and I am so grateful. I mean, it's a weird thing to say, but there is a line in the film where I say to the sister, thanks so much for getting cancer, so I might not have to. And that actually was a conversation I had with my sister. So she started chemo on a Friday, and that Monday I had my first preventative surgery where they removed my ovaries and my uterus, and my mom was there with us at chemo. And as I was sitting there, I was just sort of like, look at these three women here, the three of us, the Sidell women, you know, what my mom has been through, what my sister is now going through, that this is a genetic mutation that got passed to us from her. My mom is feeling very guilty that she, you know, that she passed this to us, and feeling, I'm sure, very triggered watching my sister go through the chemo like she went through. And I just thought, like, this is such an unique experience. Here I am having these preventative surgeries while these other things are happening. And it didn't really totally like coagulate in my head to make a project about this until I was actually in recovery from my double mastectomy, which was a year later. And that really, I was sort of like, this is actually such a unique, weird, bizarre situation. Like, there should be like, and it's true, like there should be something out there. And since I'm an actor and I'm a storyteller, really, I guess I should say, and more of like I'm a storyteller, like why don't I tell this story? And I'm sure there were lots of other people going through it, and there's not really anything in entertainment that deals with this exact issue. So that was a long-winded story, but you got my whole, like, all the medical stuff and where I got the idea for the film.
What a great twofer. But so first, thank you for sharing all that. I'm sure at this point, like you said, like a lot of things, you know, it's funny. My mom had this situation. So she's a cardiac nurse, and it's you know, around dying people all the time. They come in, they have heart problems or whatever. And she was exchanging stories with somebody, and she just said, oh, well, and this happened. And the patient was like, oh my God, how can you just like say, and this happened? And my mom said, well, when something happens to you, it just becomes like, well, one day this happened. But if someone else didn't go through it, they can't imagine like going through it because they didn't. But once you do go through something, you're kind of like, well, you know, 10 years ago, this happened, and, you know, and now I'm here, you know, but so to hear all that, like, of course, and I can see the movie in my head still, you know, I just really want to thank you. And you're right. You really are a storyteller, but also like these stories need to be told and shared, because that's how we not only connect with people or even parallel things like, oh, my version of that is this. And then now I feel like there's a connection here, or I understand this thing that I did, or I'm interested, or I'm going to donate, or whatever. It brings awareness to all these things. So I really want to thank you for not only being so brave to go through that in your life, but to go through the whole process, because as I mentioned earlier, it's so hard getting, especially an indie feature done. And it's really easy to just stop. But at some point you have to just say like, God damn it, like no matter what, like we're making this movie and we're getting it out because I want people to know this. And so that was the experience. Like my wife and I have done some indie features, and we're in the back, we're like crying and like laughing. We're like, oh my God, like this is why like film festivals are important. This is why movie making is important. This is why like storytelling is important. We're like, this one was the epitome of all of these things. So
thank you.
I really encourage people like go see the movie. And let's do a quick segue, because we were just talking before we started rolling, like it's coming out. So talk to me about like what's going on with it and where people can see it and all the things.
Right. Well, as of right now, you can pre-order on Apple TV, but it will be out on streaming. You'll be able to buy it on Apple TV or buy or rent Apple TV, Amazon, all VOD platforms, October 3rd. So that's our big October 3rd, Mean Girls Day. I don't know if you're a Mean Girls fan, but we were laughing.
I've seen the movie, but I didn't know Mean Girls had a day. So let's talk about that for a minute.
Well, we were so excited when we were like, oh my God, it's October 3rd. There's the scene where Lindsay Lohan says, on October 3rd, Aaron Samuels asked me what day it was. And then she's like, it's October 3rd. So October 3rd. So this was very exciting for me. So on Mean Girls Day, our film is going to be released for streaming. And also, you can buy a DVD, which like, you know, that still exists. So yeah, you'll be able to get it on DVD and stream it.
It's funny you mentioned that. I just heard podcasts and someone was talking about like, can we go back to analog? Like I want to feel stuff. You know, like I'm tired of pressing buttons. Like I want to turn dials and I want to push levers and I want to like open cases and I want to put discs and stuff. And like, I want to be like, I have the movie.
You know what I really miss from that, especially, is like when a new album comes out, your favorite band, and you get the CD and you open it and the lyrics are in the insert and you listen to the whole album and you follow along with I miss that.
The other thing that was great about that, and this is why I'm glad you're doing a DVD, and this is gonna lead to a question, because they had a way to then introduce and share to you all these things. Like they would put the thank yous, or they would list all their influences, and you're like, I've never heard of any of these bands. And then you become fan of those bands because the band you're listening to credits that band, or they have a website or whatever. DVDs have a way of teaching us stuff. The double disc ultra extended edition with 5 commentaries, and you're like, wow, I'm going to spend a week with this movie, and I'm going to watch all the featurettes and how they did stuff. And I grew up I was a teenager, high school and college in the 90s. And so that's how it's like we learned how movies were made. We go to the library and just be like, oh, this movie won the Palme d'Or. I don't know what that means, but I guess it's important. And then you're watching some foreign film that's blowing your mind when you're like 16. And then you're watching the interviews with people. And now it's like you just watch the movie and then you watch the next movie. So I'm so glad that you're doing that. So let me ask, how did that come up? And what else is on the DVD? Is there any extra bonus stuff?
Oh, I wish. I think we do have this fun bonus scene that originally was in the credits, and it was a Barry Bostwick scene. And it was originally in the film, but then it like just sort of wasn't working in the film. And then we'd put it at the end of the credits because it was so funny. And then it's just not in there at all. But yeah, no, I wish we had like bloopers and things like that to put on the DVD. I think it really is just the film. And our distribution company is Freestyle. And this is just how they do it. So the VOD platforms and DVD. And they said that I guess it's, picking up. People are really interested in purchasing actual DVDs again.
Well, I'm glad that you're doing that, because again, I think there's something to be said about, or even just sharing the disc with someone. Mm. But being able to show it to them, and like you were saying about getting your new CD, it's you're listening to it like while you're holding it, while you're seeing it, like you're interacting with all these senses at once, and it really imprints it on you in a way that just something on a screen doesn't.
It's true. I've just never felt the same way since everything went digital. I really have not felt the same way. And I think even some songs, I love these songs and I just still don't know the lyrics. And I kind of wished I'd been able to, read. I'm sure I can look them up online, but it's just a whole different scenario.
Sorry to stop the show, but we've got some bills to pay around here. And to do that, I wanted to point out a couple things I've got on offer at ShaneBorza.com. As both a master level mental health coach and an award-winning filmmaker, I have the experience and expertise to help you go further faster, regardless of whether that is in your production or life. I am psyched to announce all my courses and books have been updated and expanded and are available on both Apple Books and at my shop. Especially wanted to point out my film notes book and workbook, where you can learn everything you need to make your film and get it out to the world. If you need help with either your life or film, please reach out. And now, back to the show.
Well, I want to get back to, and really you're the triple threat here because you're acting and writing and producing. So how was it being both like in front of, behind the camera, or perhaps another way to think of it as being through the entire production arc? Because of course the writing happens way before production. And as a producer, you're just carrying it all the way across pre-production to post and delivery and everything. So I was just looking, so I believe this is the first writer and producer credit you've had. So how did you get into like, I'm going to co-write this and star in it and produce it? And then how was your experience kind of switching hats all the way through?
It was such a strange arc of things. And I think I was lucky again in that like I had been an actor out here and I've worked with other people. And so I brought on people I knew who I knew were good producers, right? There's Liam Finn, who's our line producer. I worked with him on a Shudder project. And he brought on our other producer, Robin, who he had worked on a ton of projects. So I think I was smart enough to know that I needed to bring on people who knew what they were doing because it was my first time, and they really took the reins. We have another producer, Mark Stolaroff, who ended up basically taking us through post and teaching me honestly how to go through post as we were doing it. I also worked with him on that Shutter project. So I could not do it alone, and I didn't do it alone. And the writer, my co-writer, he was someone who's, I had seen one of his films before, and I actually knew his wife from high school. So it was bringing people together who I knew could do these jobs, and just knowing that since I was going to be telling my story, I wanted to have a hand as a producer. I wanted to be involved in the whole creation of it. Now there were moments like when we actually were shooting, where I basically said to Liam and to Robin and to our other producer, Amy, like, I cannot be a producer the entire time we're shooting whenever I'm on set. So please just don't talk to me about any of the producerial stuff, like, while I'm shooting. And that was great. And they were amazing, at being able to do that. And they're just amazing producers. So that was I'm glad I did that. That helped me, with the performance and just with creating, doing all the acting. But there were multiple moments, Shane, when I was like, we had so many bumps along the way. We shot some of it in 2020. We shot some of it in 2021. We thought we were finished after the 2021 shoot. And then we were like, I don't think this is actually working, and I feel like we need some stuff. And then there was a rewriting of like half the script. And then in 2023, we reshot like that second half of the script. But in that time, I had moments where I was just like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I think I'm done. Like, I think this movie is just never going to come out. And I have to credit this amazing producer, Amy Byer-Shainman. She's now become like one of my best friends. I love her. So she is known on social media as the BRCA responder. It's like her life's work is to be an advocate for people with gene mutations, especially BRCA. And she is also someone who had the preventative surgeries. And we connected randomly. She slid into my DMs like when I was first starting this project. And honestly, it was Amy multiple times who was just like, we have to finish this. We have to finish. So like, this is not something I did alone or could have done alone. I had so much support, and I think there were times that Amy was ready to give up, that I was like, no, we're not going to give up. And I kind of love that it was the two of us, these two we call previvors, right, who have been through all of this stuff together, who were kind of like, I give up. No, you can't. No, I give up. No, you can't. And now to be here is like a shock. And I don't think we ever really thought this film would come out. And it was quite a long process.
Well, I'm so glad you found each other, because as you know, there's always, for people that don't know, one of the sayings in the industry that I always laugh about is, it's called show business, not show friends. But it is about those friendships that you make and those connections. And production's kind of like summer camp for adults. You kind of like get together for a week or a month, and you're like 24/7, and you feel like, yesterday I didn't know you, today we met, and tomorrow you're my best friend forever. And you don't see them for 10 years until you work on another project, and it's like the next day. It's this amazing experience that, non-industry people don't really necessarily understand or kind of go through, other than, I had a friend recently say they went back to their high school reunion, and they're like, oh, I caught up with all my friends, and it was like 20 years didn't matter, So I guess there are some of those in kind of civilian life, so to speak. But it can be really amazing when someone comes in and they're like the project angel. You're like, oh my God, they fell out of the sky. Thank God you're here so we can
That's
do
Amy.
this.
That is Amy.
But you got a little ahead of me, because I was going to ask, like, okay, you started in 2018. So I had remembered as you started talking about that, because you had mentioned that in the panel, like, oh yeah, it wasn't working. We had to do a big shift. So 2018, you did some writing. 2020, you did some shooting, and then the pandemic, of course, interrupted everybody. And then you did this pivot. So how did you go from that rewrite and that second round of shooting to now? Because of course, post is a beast that a lot of people don't know about. When people think of filmmaking, they think of being on set and that's it.
Yeah.
But as I'm sure learned in this process, there's so much once you wrap.
Yes. I mean, that has been so enlightening. I have learned so much. I'm like, thank you to Mark Stolaroff. Thank you to Liam Finn. Thank you to, yeah, they've taught me so much. I've been in the room with them when things have been happening. It's been wonderful. So yeah, we didn't get super far on post with the first round that when we thought the film was finished in 2021. We had like a completed edit, but we had not gone through like color or sound or anything. So luckily it was not like we had completely finished and spent months doing that. So, and what we ended up doing at that point was, Amy was really keyed into making sure that everything that was in that film was going to be sensitive to people who were going through what we had been through, and people who have cancer diagnoses, and also for doctors and genetic counselors. And so she had this eye that was about like, you know, if we really want to be making a difference and trying to spread this message, we need to make sure we're not like going to alienate anyone. And I think that early version of the film, it was a little quirkier and it was a little darker, and I think it made fun of the doctor was a little bit sort of a buffoon that we kind of made fun of. And we ended up sending this cut to like I sent it to some of my close friends, and Amy sent it to some people in this community. And we were getting some feedback that felt like maybe we needed to shift the tone in some places. So that's kind of what started that. And we started thinking about it. And then we started having ideas, and Amy, who is just like her finger is like on the pulse of all of the, like the new information about BRCA and whatever new stuff is coming out. She then said, you know, since we have this opportunity, if we're going to rewrite some stuff and going to reshoot, I think we need to add a few things. I think we need to add a scene with a genetic counselor, because that is an important piece of information that I think anyone who's undergoing genetic testing needs to know, that's the first person you should talk to. They're the ones who can interpret the results. So Amy was like, number one, we need that. So we were like, okay, we're going to write a scene with a genetic counselor. And then she had the idea that we needed to do a scene with a male coming in for a breast exam, for a mammogram. And that scene ended up being with Raymond Cruz from Breaking Bad, and he's so fantastic. And so we really got a chance, I think, to fine tune that and make sure that we were not going to make anyone feel alienated. And, you know, we ended up not really, you know, we didn't want to make fun of the we don't make fun of any doctors. So we really got a chance to like get it. Amy says like to get it right. I think we got a chance to get it right. And I think it also turned into a film that's a lot more accessible. So like originally, I just have a super dark sense of humor. Like I'm sort of a very dark person. I like dark comedies. I like all the weird stuff. So there were actually puppets in the movie. There were puppets of the ovaries and puppet fallopian tubes and puppet uterus. And that just wasn't working. So that ended up going. So, and I think maybe that would not have been as accessible, I think, to a broader audience and people who we wanted to get this message to. So I think the way that the film ultimately turned out is the best way for us, I think, to share the information.
And I really want to piggyback on this because this is really important for people that have projects well, first, you finish the project. It's like we said earlier, like so many things go wrong or fall out of the sky, or, you know, because your life is happening while you're like, God damn it, I'm going to finish this no matter what. And then you're like, but life goes, well, here's the no matter what. And you're like, oh, fine, I'll shelve it for 6 more months. So every time it's really hard to like pick it back up again or anything like, oh, I haven't run in a year. Like, oh, it's so hard, but just pick it back up. But the other thing that's really important is Tim Ferriss asked this question a lot on his podcast. Like what's a mistake or a failure that led to a future success? And this is so often the case with a film where people go, you know, I wrote this 10 years ago and like, it doesn't land anymore or doesn't work or things have changed or my perspective has changed or whatever. And so sometimes when it's like, oh, the pandemic happens, well, now we have a year to like think about this. You know, we can put the extra layer of polish. We can. And that's something that my wife and I were so taken with this because she's really smart. And she came in and was like, you know, she's like, the husband story and character was so real, and the sister story and character was so real, and the mom story and like every character, you were like, I could watch this. I feel like I saw the movie through all the characters. And quite often, especially in indie film, people get very stuck in like, I'm telling this character's story and everybody else is just like window dressing. And that's one of the things that I was like, God, this is so well done, because everything felt so right across the board.
Thank you for saying that, because that was one of the issues that we were dealing with actually after sending that first version to people, was people feeling like Pat, the husband, like we didn't really know what was going on with him. And actually, so a lot of the Pat and Danielle scenes are new. They were from the second shoot, and I don't think we had done a good job of fleshing out that character. And there were, like 4 or 5 new scenes of just the two of them, kind of where we got to go back. It was kind of a gift in a way that we were able to say, okay, here's the film we have. Like, what are our notes for this film? Well, we feel like Pat, we don't understand where he's coming from. And then to like sit down and be like, where can we fit in something that would create like this arc for him that gets to the scene we already shot at the end? But like, there ultimately, like, we felt like he originally, like, he didn't necessarily have like a serious point of view, and Pat and his character always seemed to be very calm. And we were like, well, we have these great scenes of him, and he said, Michael Rourke, such a great actor. We have these amazing scenes with him, and that we know we want to keep. And he's like very calm. And so I was like, what if in these rewrites we create these scenes where he's basically like, I'm being calm on purpose because I don't know what to say to you. And it ended up creating this whole other level for his character that I think came out of this note that was like, what's Pat's deal? And I think that ended up being such a great part of the film that you really learn that, like, he was hiding, he was being calm because he was trying to do what he thought his wife wanted. And I think none of that was coming across in the original version.
And again, I'm really want people to take hopefully the takeaway here is like, sometimes you have these, like you said, the gift. At first, you don't see it as a gift. What a pain in the ass. Like, can we just please get a break here? But then later it's like, oh, and that can sometimes give you the opportunity when the next mile or boulder gets in the way, that you can go, well, maybe this is a gift like the last time was. And I think some of this too is, kind of like growth. So like my wife and I, it was yesterday, actually, we had our 10th wedding anniversary. So,
congratulations. Happy anniversary.
So we've been together for lucky 13 and married for 10. And a lot of this, I can't tell you, like, we talked about this movie for like a week.
Oh my God. Thank you for telling me that. That means so much to me. After everything we've been through with it, I'm so glad to hear that.
because, when you're with someone for a long time, you're literally like growing with them, not only like closer and deeper and all that stuff, but like, it's like, oh, like, cause I was 37 when we met, now I'm 50. It's like, oh, well, like, I've gone through decades with you. And so there is a lot that happens where you just assign yourself a role in the relationship, or you believe that they're this kind of person and they want me to be this kind of person. And you forget sometimes, like, we're growing and changing all the time. And especially when like a bombshell hits of like, we're dealing with cancer now or whatever, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, like, this is disrupting the normal. And sometimes you retreat to normal, and sometimes like, well, normal doesn't exist anymore. We have to go, who are you now? Who am I? How are we gonna? So all of that stuff led to us having conversations like that about our life, because it was so accurately portrayed in the film. And so to hear both in the panel and here that you were like, well, we had an A and then it didn't work, so we made a B. Like, I'm so glad that happened, even though I'm sure in the middle of that it was terrible. But I'm so glad that you went through
breaking in the middle, yes. But yeah, I think Amy, I love that Amy's like, I think we got it right because of that.
Now, you mentioned a couple of people, so I just want to, I pulled this up real quick on the side. So you have Rima Cruz is in it, Barry Bostwick is in it, Jamie King is in it. There's all these great people. So how did you assemble this team to help you? Like you mentioned the LA connections. Like, were people drawn to the project because of the project, or these friends and you had favors and you knew people? Like, how did you get everybody? Because everyone was great.
I know, everyone was amazing. We reached out to them really. Like I said, I played Leslie Ann Warren's daughter in this miniseries when I was 9. I think she was like nominated for an Emmy for it. I mean, she was like the lead. I was in like, an episode. And I've just always loved her. And as we were thinking about wanting to cast, I was like, what if we go out to Leslie? And I wrote this letter like about how much I loved playing her daughter and all of this stuff. And we literally just went out. I was in an acting class for a long time, and the teacher was a casting director. Ani Avetian is her name. And she was still casting at the time, but she also just loved working with actors. So I asked her to come on, and she was our casting director. And we just went to Leslie's reps with the letter and with the script, and she was interested, and, we had a phone call, and that's kind of how that came about. And she was sort of the first one who was interested in coming on. Although earlier we had Joanna Kearns come on as an executive producer. And I think that again was an LA thing that I knew her daughter. We went to school together. Her mom had seen me in plays and things like that. And I just loved her sense of comedy, and she was doing a lot of directing. And I originally sort of just asked if she would read the script and sort of give us notes. And she was just giving these amazing notes. And ultimately I was like, would you consider being executive producer? And she came on. And again, growing up in LA, I lucked out with having some of these connections. But then like Leslie was interested, and then Leslie ultimately brought on Barry because she had worked with him before, and together they're incredible. We're so glad she did that. We actually did not have the sister role, the one that Jamie King ended up playing, cast until like 3 days before we started shooting. We could not find, we just didn't have a fit. It was just not working out. Our people's dates weren't working, whatever it was. So then we get Jamie like 3 days beforehand. And probably my favorite part of this entire film and this entire shoot was just that, for whatever reason, you never know what chemistry is going to happen. You never know if you're going to be able to work well with people or whatever, which is why, they do casting chemistry reads. For whatever reason, Jamie and I just clicked. And it was so much fun to do scenes with her. I could act with her forever. We had the best rapport, and it was just one of those magical things. So that again, 3 days before she comes on, it's this magical thing. Michael was someone that our director had seen before and was like, he's going to be perfect for this role. So he got brought on that way. And then our casting director, Ani, was the casting director for The Closer, which Raymond was on. And when we were looking we were like, we feel like we want a cameo. We want a cameo of some, of a recognizable person. We want someone who's really known as being macho and masculine, because we want this person to be like, yeah, I have to get a mammogram. And she was like, what about Raymond? And she just called him and, was like, I have this project. I think it's really great. She sent the script, and ultimately, he had a sister who passed away from cancer, and he felt very drawn to this project, and he came on, and he actually did some ad-libbing in there. I mean, he actually says, I'm doing it for my sister. And that was not in the script, and it was just him bringing his own story. So it was just kind of one thing led to another, and just the history of knowing this casting director from being in her acting class. It's spending time in LA, doing projects, meeting people.
Well, that's a fun little Easter egg, because I remember that line in the movie. But to go back to you and Jamie, so this is a funny thing that my wife and I laughed about for a week, because the chemistry between the two of you is crazy. And I go, so we get out of the movie and we're driving home and we're talking about it, and I go, those two could be sisters. And my wife goes, well, they are sisters. I'm like, no, I mean, there's sisters in the movie, but they could really be sisters. And she's like, no, but they were sisters. And just the semantics of it. And we just went round and round, and we were just laughing our heads off about the no, but you know what I mean? No, I love that. Yeah, that was great.
That's awesome.
So as I mentioned at the beginning, this show is called Film Notes. I love to ask people what are your notes? And so a couple ways to have you think about it is, one, as an actor, like, what are some good notes for people who may want to do what you do, or to work with someone like you? You just told this great story about how you happened into all these actors, like how can people either pitch a project to you or hire you or get started if they're an actor, but then also as the like filmmaker side, like what might be some notes on that as well?
Okay, so as an actor, if you'd like to get in touch with me, you can contact my reps, Entertainment Lab or Daniel Hoff Agency, or you can find me on Instagram, devin.sidell. And I think as an actor, if I'm giving notes or advice or whatever, it's honestly when you're first starting out, or if you just act in as much as you can. I mean, I think that's how I just did everything I could in high school and college, and then you end up meeting people who end up doing other projects later, but you're already friends and you've already worked together, and you then end up having a sort of a network, and it's pretty amazing. And it's a network that's based on respect and feeling like the other person is talented, and not based on trying to create networks by going to parties and, talking yourself up. I kind of like that scenario. And then I guess, let's see. So as a filmmaker, gosh, I mean, this is my first time. So I think I would say bring on the people who know what they're doing. If you don't know, without Liam, without Mark, without Robin, without Amy, this would not have happened. And then I learned a ton. And now I also feel like it helped me as an actor, because one of my favorite, I guess here's a good note. As actors, frequently will like show up on set to shoot, if you're shooting for like a day, or you're just coming on to do a day player role in a series that's been going on forever. And you show up and it's like, you can tell there's like something wrong, like it's like tense or whatever. And immediately we all just think, oh God, what did I do? Like I did a horrible job. I'm not doing what they want. I've ruined this take for that. They're upset that they hired me. And then having been on the other side of that, I'm like, no. They probably have a million things going on with money and fighting with other producers. It has nothing to do with you as an actor. And so there was something very freeing about like, no, really? Like nothing has anything to do with you. You show up, you do your acting job. Like you don't have to take anything personally. There's a lot of other shit going on.
And that is a great note, and I hope people really take that to heart. In life too, a lot of times we feel like, oh, what did I do? Oh no. Yeah, most people, they're not thinking about you at all. So because there's a lot of moving parts on a film, and it's hard to balance all that. So I really want to congratulate you, especially since this is your first feature with all those roles at once. Because the other thing, this is kind of like you said, it's kind of a dramedy in certain parts, there are funny parts and everything, but it's kind of a heavy role, but also it's based on this real life experience you went through. So I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that came up too. So I can only imagine what it would be like to be like, I have a producers meeting and then go to sleep, and tomorrow I'm acting.
Yes.
And I'm going to like pretend to be a person. Oh wait, I'm the person. Oh, yes. So it's kind of meta in a way.
So meta. There was so much of that. Yeah.
Really wanted to thank you again for being here and just making the film, because that's why I told my wife, I was like, I kind of want to run out into the thing and like find her, and she's like, you should have her be on the show. I'm like, okay.
I'm so glad you did that. I'm so glad to talk to you about this, and thank you so much for telling me how the movie affected you and that you guys were talking about it. That makes this all, all the 8 years or whatever and all of the roadblocks, I feel a lot better.
Well, let's put a spotlight on both you and the film. So you mentioned Instagram and your reps and everything a minute ago, but where can people contact you, follow you, see what you're doing, all of that?
Awesome. So you can go to my website, devinsidell.com. You can go to the film's website, lovedaniellefilm.com. And the film is also all over social media. We couldn't get the same handle on all of the platforms. So it is something like Love Danielle Film, but some of them have periods and some of them have underscores. So you can look for that. Yeah. And then, our website has information it has a link to the pre-order on Apple TV. Again, it's going to be coming out October 3rd. And it also has a link for people for nonprofits or educational companies. You can license the film to show in an educational situation. We have some groups that are interested in like showing it to genetic counseling students and things like that, which is very exciting. So that's going to be an opportunity that's available as well. And you can message us. I have a contact form, on my website, and we have a contact form on the film's website.
That just brought to mind because I've worked on a couple, what a friend of mine calls it consciousness projects or something. So it's like, it's not just like, we're just making this because it's fun. Like, we're making this to bring awareness or what have you. So are there any organizations or anything that you might want people to check out or go donate to or anything like that?
Thank you so much for bringing that up. Yes, 100%. There is a genetic testing company called JScreen. We just partnered with them in Atlanta for a screening, and they are the only company out there, I believe. They've created an affordable genetic testing kit that you can receive in the mail. You spit into it. It's not even blood. And then as part of the package that you purchase, you also Zoom with a genetic counselor who is able to interpret the results in the correct way because they have been trained to do so. And they will sit with you and have a meeting and look at your family history, and they're able to tell you personally what might be, what you need to know about your genes and your health. And the fact that it's accessible is unbelievable. I mean, I think, it's not like it costs nothing, but it's compared to, it used to be, I think if you wanted to do a genetic test and you didn't have insurance or something, it was like thousands of dollars. And this company, I believe it's $250. And that includes the testing and the genetic counselor. So JScreen is really, really fantastic. I highly recommend them for everything. And everybody who's involved with them, has had some sort of hereditary family something and has had to deal with genetic testing, and have basically come together to create this product that I think is like the most accessible available.
Well, that's definitely a great shout out to that, because I didn't know that existed, and that sounds like an amazing thing. And like you had mentioned, even just like genetic counselors, I mean, I kind of was like, oh, I remember that was somebody in the movie, but like if you had asked me just on the street, like, what's a genetic counselor? I'm like, I don't know, but your film put that title like in my head. And
it's so bad.
Yeah, even just that is like raising more awareness for people, because we can't talk about things that we don't know about. But that also lands from my wife has a chronic illness, so it's like, oh, this might be helpful. Like,
yes,
yes,
absolutely.
So just wanted to ask if there's anything else you want to bring up, because like the JScreen thing was great. Are there any other partnerships or anything else like that you'd like to mention before we bring this to a close here?
I mean, if there's one thing I wanted to say, it would just be proactive about your own health, because you are worth it. I know it's not a company we've worked with or whatever, but I feel like that is kind of the ultimate message of this movie. Like, you are worth it. Save your life if you can.
Yeah. It's I think people just either get busy and they forget, and all of a sudden the chronic thing becomes serious, or they just don't know.
Yeah.
And again, that's where a story like this, I think, is really important. So thank you again for making it. Thank you for being here and talking about it. And we were chatting earlier, and I just want to remind people, if you're listening to this as a podcast, this is also a show on YouTube. And we're talking about filmmaking. It's something you see. So I always encourage people to go to the YouTube channel, watch the show. You get to see the speaker. You get to see on the screen like the things we're talking about. I always put in the BTS stuff and the posters and the links, and it makes it easy to access some of the other things. I know I listen to tons of podcasts while I'm doing other things, and that's convenient, but I always encourage people to watch the show. So all that being said, thank you so much for being here. And I can't wait to celebrate your movie when it comes out on October 3rd.
Thank you so, so much.
And everyone for watching. We'll see you next month. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to support the show, please click on the link below. You can also contact me at my website if you have any questions about filmmaking or anything else. Off to the side, you'll see a couple of my books, Film Notes and the Film Notes Workbook. I encourage you to check those out if you'd like to learn more about filmmaking. See you in the next episode.
Scene 1, Apple, take 1.